In the autumn of 1887, under a heavy blanket of fog, a disappearance would stir the very foundations of a city steeped in wealth, power, and corruption. The industrial metropolis, with its towering buildings and grand avenues, became the backdrop for a mystery that would ripple through its society, exposing its darkest secrets. Jonathan Whitmore, a 25-year-old heir to one of the country's most influential fortunes, vanished without a trace on a fog-choked evening, and with his disappearance, an era of opulence and blind trust in authority was abruptly shattered. Jonathan was no ordinary heir. He wasn't content to simply enjoy the comforts of wealth or live out his life surrounded by luxury. Beneath the polished surface of his aristocratic family life, he harbored a burning desire for justice, a sense of duty that led him down paths few could understand. He had secretly been pouring his personal resources into a small orphanage in East Hollow, an impoverished neighborhood neglected by the city's elite. The children there were his only true companions, and the orphanage became more than just a charitable project. It became his purpose, his refuge. But it wasn't just the plight of these children that haunted him. In the shadows of his philanthropic work, a far greater threat was quietly rising. For weeks before his disappearance, Jonathan had been receiving strange letters, notes written in careful, almost rehearsed handwriting, warning him that he was being watched. At first, he had dismissed them, but as the days wore on, the tone of the letters grew darker, more ominous. He spoke to no one of his growing fear, but his actions betrayed him. He became more secretive, more elusive. Then, just days before he vanished, Jonathan wrote a cryptic note to his family that read, "The shadows conceal more than darkness." To those who knew him, it seemed like nothing more than the ramblings of a man losing himself in the weight of his own idealism. But Detective Elias Thorncroft, the city's most renowned investigator, recognized something far deeper in the words, something far more calculated. Thorncroft was a man of precision. Nothing escaped his notice. When he was called upon to investigate Jonathan's sudden disappearance, he did not waste time searching for answers where the obvious would lead. Instead, he began in East Hollow, the place Jonathan had visited under an assumed name. The orphanage, a crumbling building in one of the city's most forgotten districts, became the first piece of the puzzle. Staff recalled that Jonathan had grown increasingly paranoid in the days leading to his vanishing. He'd mentioned feeling as though someone was always following him, that he could hear footsteps in the dark corners of the streets. But there was one thing the staff remembered most vividly: his last visit, when he had warned the headmistress of the orphanage, "I know they're watching. They'll do whatever it takes to stop me from exposing them." It was these words, delivered in a voice strained with fear, that piqued Thorncroft's interest. Jonathan wasn't simply trying to protect the orphanage, he was trying to protect something much larger. Thorncroft's suspicions grew as he began uncovering the first signs of a conspiracy, one that ran deep into the veins of the city's political and business elite. It seemed that Jonathan had uncovered something that could bring down the foundations of power itself. As Thorncroft dug deeper, it became clear that Jonathan had stumbled onto a plan that would devastate the lives of countless innocent people, all in the name of profit. Jonathan's investigation, unbeknownst to his family, had led him into a world of corruption, greedy businessmen, corrupt politicians, and even members of his own extended family, all conspiring to seize control of the land in East Hollow. The area was set to be bulldozed, its people displaced, its businesses destroyed, all in favor of a new commercial development project that would line the pockets of the wealthy few. Jonathan, with his unyielding sense of right and wrong, had made it his mission to stop this from happening. But the people he was up against were powerful and ruthless. They were willing to do anything to protect their interests, and Jonathan's discovery of their plans made him a threat. The breakthrough came when Thorncroft discovered a hidden ledger in Jonathan's study, a small, leather-bound book filled with meticulous notes. The ledger contained names, dates, amounts of money exchanged, and a series of meetings held in secret locations. It was a damning record of the conspiracy, detailing how several prominent individuals had been bribing officials and manipulating property laws to ensure the takeover of East Hollow. This evidence confirmed what Thorncroft had feared. Jonathan had been targeted. Someone had silenced him before he could expose the truth. But who? The investigation took Thorncroft deeper into the city's underworld. He pursued leads that others had discarded as irrelevant, following whispers from the streets to the back alleys where the city's forgotten residents lived. His search led him to a name that kept resurfacing: Samuel Reed. Reed was a former city clerk who had been dismissed under mysterious circumstances nearly a year before Jonathan's disappearance. Thorncroft had a hunch that Reed knew more about Jonathan's final days than anyone else. When Thorncroft finally tracked down Samuel Reed, he found the man in a graveyard, working under the guise of a gravedigger. Reed was a broken man, gaunt and disheveled, with a look of someone who had been running from something for too long. But when he saw Thorncroft, something inside him broke. He confessed everything. Reed explained that Jonathan had come to him in the days leading up to his disappearance, armed with documents that proved the conspiracy. Reed had given him the final pieces of the puzzle: records, contracts, and eyewitness testimony that would have sent the guilty parties to prison. But Reed had warned Jonathan that they were watching him, that it was only a matter of time before they moved to silence him. The revelation sent a chill through Thorncroft's spine. He had known that Jonathan had been in danger, but now he understood just how close the young heir had come to unmasking the true faces behind the corruption. Reed spoke of one final meeting Jonathan had arranged, a meeting with a whistleblower who had crucial evidence to bring down the entire operation. But Jonathan had never returned from that meeting. With Reed's help, Thorncroft traced the last movements of Jonathan to a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city. It was there, in a hidden cellar beneath a crumbling manor, that they found Jonathan, emaciated, bruised, and broken, but alive. The rescue wasn't without its cost. Thorncroft had to confront the conspirators, men who had thought themselves untouchable. They were arrested, their crimes exposed to the world, and their empires crumbled in the wake of their capture. When Jonathan returned, he was no longer the same man who had disappeared. He had seen the worst that humanity had to offer, and yet he had survived. But he did not return to the comforts of his wealth. Instead, he used his family's fortune to fight back against the very people who had sought to destroy him and his work. He rebuilt the orphanage in East Hollow, turning it into a center of education and justice, and expanded his efforts to fight corruption wherever it reared its ugly head. Elias Thorncroft, the detective who had uncovered the truth, never sought fame or recognition. He returned to his quiet life, content in the knowledge that his persistence had brought justice to those who needed it most. Jonathan Whitmore, however, became a symbol, not of privilege or wealth, but of resilience. His story, once whispered in the corners of drawing rooms and printed in scandal sheets, became a legend, a story of one man who refused to let the darkness win, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And the conspirators, they were soon forgotten, their names relegated to the dustbin of history. But Jonathan Whitmore's name, his unwavering determination, would live on as a reminder that no matter how deep the shadows, light will always find a way to break through